The sun had just begun to rise over the rolling plains, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. A lone cowboy rode slowly along the dirt road, his horse's hooves stirring up small clouds of dust. He was a man used to long rides and quiet days. His name was Samuel, a man who preferred the company of his horses and the wide open land to the chatter of townsfolk. Samuel had spent most of his life on the prairie, working hard, tending his small herd of cattle, and keeping to himself. He had a steady hand, a calm demeanor, and a quiet sense of justice, but he had never shared his life with anyone. On this morning, as Samuel followed the path toward a small village nestled between the hills, he noticed the smell of fresh bread drifting through the air. It was a warm, inviting scent that reminded him of the rare times he had shared a meal with others long ago. Curious and hungry, he guided his horse toward the source. At the edge of the village stood a small, neat house. Smoke curled gently from the chimney, and in the yard, 3 children played quietly while their mother tended to a garden. Samuel dismounted and approached the house. He was careful not to startle anyone. The children looked up at him with wide eyes, and the woman, noticing his presence, came to the door. She was a widow, her face marked by quiet hardship, but also strength and grace. She looked at him carefully, measuring his intentions while Samuel tipped his hat politely. "Good morning," he said, his voice steady but soft. "I was passing through and smelled your bread. Might I trouble you for a taste?" The woman hesitated. She had been cautious since her husband had passed away. Life had not been easy, and she had learned to be wary of strangers. But there was something in Samuel's eyes, a calm, respectful presence, that eased her suspicion. She nodded slowly and turned back into the kitchen, motioning for the children to follow her. Samuel stepped closer and watched as the woman cut a slice of bread, placing it gently on a small plate. One of the children, a curious boy of about 10, carried it to him. The bread was warm and smelled of sweetness and home. Samuel took a bite and paused, savoring the taste. It was simple, but there was care in the making, something that told him more about this family than words ever could. As he ate, he looked around. The children were helping their mother, picking weeds from the garden and carrying small buckets of water. There was a quiet harmony to the way they worked together, a sense of love and responsibility that was rare to see. Samuel felt a tug at his heart. He had lived alone for so long, and he realized he had almost forgotten what it felt like to be part of a family. The widow watched him carefully, still unsure what this stranger wanted. Samuel noticed the hesitation and spoke gently. "I can see you have a hard life. You are doing all you can to keep your children safe and fed. It is not easy, I can tell." The woman's eyes softened slightly. She had been struggling to make ends meet. After her husband died, she had been left with the small house, a modest plot of land, and the responsibility of 3 children who depended on her. Every day was a challenge, from planting and harvesting to cooking and keeping the children well. She had managed but barely, and the thought of her future was always heavy on her mind. Samuel continued, "I do not mean to trouble you, ma'am, but I have some land and cattle. I live alone, and I could use some company. More than that, I want to help someone who is doing their best to survive. I have a proposition if you would hear it." The woman's heart skipped a beat. She had heard of people offering help in the past, but it often came with strings attached. She waited silently, curious and cautious. Samuel, noticing her hesitation, decided to speak plainly. "I can give you and your children a safe place to live," he said. "I will provide for you your home, your food, and your work. In return, I would ask you to come and live with me at my ranch. I do not expect anything more than that. I just want to offer you safety and stability." The widow was taken aback. It was an unusual offer, one she had never imagined. She looked at her children, wondering what life would be like if they accepted. The thought of leaving the home they had known, even though it was modest, was frightening. But she also thought of the long winters, the hunger, and the uncertainty that had haunted them since her husband passed. Samuel saw the conflict in her eyes and added softly, "I do not intend to take advantage of you. I am a man of my word. You and your children would be treated with respect. I am not asking for love or loyalty beyond what family offers. I simply want to give you a chance at a better life." The children, sensing the seriousness of the conversation, looked to their mother. The oldest, a quiet girl of 14, spoke up, her voice trembling but firm. "Mother, it could be a good chance for us. We have struggled so long. Maybe we should consider it." The widow considered the words carefully. She had always tried to shield her children from hardship, but she knew she could not continue alone much longer. The thought of living on a ranch with steady food and work and a strong man to guide them seemed almost like a dream. Yet the idea of trusting a stranger was daunting. Samuel, seeing her doubt, gave a small, reassuring smile. "Take your time," he said. "You do not need to decide today. I will be in the village for a few more days. I want you to feel comfortable with your choice. There is no rush, but I hope you see that this could be the beginning of something good for all of you." That evening, Samuel rode back to the edge of the village, his mind restless. He had made his offer, and now all he could do was wait. He thought about the family, their faces, their laughter, the warmth of the home he had glimpsed. It was a strange feeling for a man who had lived alone for so long, but he felt a sense of hope, a quiet excitement that perhaps this meeting was more than chance. It could be the start of something meaningful. Meanwhile, the widow sat by the fire with her children. They discussed the offer in hushed tones, weighing the risk against the opportunity. The youngest, a lively little boy of 8, spoke first. "Mother, I want to go. He seems kind. We could have so much more food and a warm house." Her heart swelled with both fear and relief. She knew her children deserved a chance at safety and happiness. After long thought, she finally made a decision. She would trust this man with caution and care, and take the step toward a new life. It was not easy, and it would not be without challenges, but the promise of stability and kindness was worth the risk. The next morning, the widow gathered her small belongings, and the children helped carry what they could. Samuel waited quietly at the edge of the village, his horse ready. When they approached, he offered a gentle nod and a kind smile. "Are you ready?" he asked. She looked at her children, then back at Samuel, and nodded. "Yes, we are ready." And with that, they began the journey to the ranch. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows over the plains. For Samuel, it was the beginning of something new, a life that would change not only his own but the lives of the widow and her 3 children forever. The road ahead was long, but together, they would face it with courage, care, and the promise of a family forged by trust, respect, and a single slice of bread that had brought them together. The journey from the village to Samuel's ranch took most of the morning. The widow walked alongside her children carrying small bundles while Samuel rode beside them, guiding his horse and keeping a careful watch. The children were full of excitement, their eyes wide at the sight of the open plains stretching for miles. The youngest skipped along the path, pointing at birds and wildflowers, while the eldest held her mother's hand, feeling a mix of curiosity and nervousness. When they finally reached the ranch, the widow paused at the gate, taking in the sight before her. The land was vast and rolling, dotted with fields of green, grazing cattle and sturdy barns. Samuel dismounted and led the way inside, showing them where the house stood. It was a simple wooden home, well-built and solid, with a porch that overlooked the fields and a small garden already planted with vegetables. The children's eyes shone with wonder, and the widow felt a warmth in her chest she had not felt in months. Samuel spoke gently. "This will be your home now. You have a place to sleep, work to do, and food to eat. Take your time to settle in." The widow nodded, grateful yet cautious. She wanted to make sure this arrangement would work for her family. Samuel, understanding her hesitation, gave her space but stayed nearby, helping the children carry their belongings into the house. They found simple rooms for themselves, clean and warm, with enough beds for everyone. The children explored eagerly, opening drawers and peeking into cupboards, their laughter echoing through the house. Once they had settled in, the widow began to organize the kitchen. She prepared a simple meal with the vegetables she had brought and some bread that Samuel had provided. The children helped her, chopping, stirring, and setting the table. Samuel watched from the doorway, appreciating their efforts and the care they showed for one another. For the first time in years, he felt the quiet joy of home. Days passed and life on the ranch settled into a rhythm. Samuel taught the children how to care for the animals, ride horses safely, and help with the cattle. The widow showed him ways to make the house more comfortable, teaching him how to cook meals for the family and tend to the garden. Though he was used to hard work, he had never managed a home, and he found himself learning quickly under her guidance. The eldest child, a thoughtful girl named Clara, took to riding with Samuel in the early mornings, learning the ways of the land. She discovered a talent for handling the cattle and quickly gained confidence. The middle child, a quiet boy named Daniel, preferred helping in the barn, brushing horses, and mending fences with careful hands. The youngest, little Anna, was full of energy, helping her mother in the garden and learning to feed the chickens. Each child found a role that suited them, and Samuel made sure they felt valued and trusted. The widow, Margaret, also began to feel a sense of peace she had not known since her husband passed. She had feared life alone, but with Samuel's support and the children's laughter filling the house, she felt a growing hope. She and Samuel worked together to organize the home, fix fences, and prepare meals. At night, they would sit by the fire, talking softly about the day, the work, and the plans for the future. One afternoon, a storm rolled in from the west. Dark clouds covered the sky and the wind picked up, rattling the windows. Samuel noticed the children were uneasy, and he quickly went outside to secure the barn doors and check the animals. Margaret and the children worked together inside, making sure the house was safe and the fire kept warm. The youngest, Anna, clung to her mother, eyes wide as the wind howled outside. Samuel returned, bringing blankets and comforting words. The storm passed by nightfall, leaving the land wet and fresh. But the experience brought them closer together. They had faced fear together, and their trust in one another had grown. As weeks turned into months, the family found a new rhythm. Samuel began to show small acts of care that spoke louder than words. He noticed when Margaret needed rest and took over chores without being asked. He praised the children for their hard work and celebrated their small achievements, from a well-trained horse to a garden full of vegetables. The home was filled with laughter, shared meals, and quiet moments of contentment. One day, Margaret and Samuel walked along the fence line, talking about plans for the coming season. She noticed the way he paused to watch the children play in the fields, the way he smiled when one of them accomplished something new. "They have grown so much since we arrived," she said softly. Samuel nodded, a rare warmth in his eyes. "They have. And you too. You've made this house a home, Margaret." The children had also begun to trust and admire Samuel. Clara often rode with him during cattle drives, learning not only skills but the values he lived by: honesty, patience, and hard work. Daniel had grown strong and careful, always helping with chores and learning the ways of the ranch. Anna, still full of energy, had learned responsibility alongside fun, caring for the animals and helping her mother. Each child had found a sense of belonging they had never known before. As the seasons changed, the family celebrated small milestones together. They harvested the garden, mended fences, and prepared for the cold winter. Samuel and Margaret shared stories by the fire while the children listened, learning about the land, about courage, and about life. Their bond deepened with every shared task, every meal, and every quiet evening. Through it all, Samuel remained a steady presence. He was not a man of many words, but his actions showed care and respect. He never demanded more than the family could give, and he made sure each of them felt safe and valued. Margaret, once hesitant and unsure, grew to trust him completely, seeing him as a protector and a partner in the life they were building together. By the time winter arrived, the family had fully settled into life on the ranch. Snow blanketed the fields, and the fire in the house crackled warmly. The children played near the fireplace, their laughter echoing through the rooms. Margaret and Samuel sat together, watching them, feeling a quiet satisfaction. They had faced challenges, learned to trust one another, and built a life that promised safety, warmth, and love. Though life on the ranch was not always easy, the family had found strength in each other. The widow had discovered hope again, the children had discovered a sense of home, and Samuel had discovered the joy of family he had never known he missed. The ranch, once a place of solitude, had become a home filled with life, laughter, and care, and so the lone cowboy, the widow, and her 3 children lived together, learning from each other, supporting each other, and growing stronger as a family. They faced the hardships of the frontier, the challenges of daily work, and the uncertainties of life with courage, kindness, and resilience. Together they had found not just survival, but a life worth living, a life built on trust, respect, and the simple promise of caring for one another.